Great wizard, please assist me. I must know which to choose, Glyph of Scorch or Glyph of Fireball.
Ah, young mage, let me refer you to Mumra's great treatise on Scorch Glyph versus Fireball Glyph. It is a fine volume.
Scorch Glyph versus Fireball Glyph. Mumra, Mal'Ganis, June 9th, 2009. 1. Introduction. The question presented in this paper concerns glyph choices for a mage in a heroic raid setting. The question is whether he should use a Fireball glyph or a Scorch glyph in his third glyph slot. Assumptions for the analysis are limited to a standard raw model. The process of finding the best glyph choice is 3 steps. In section 1, we compute the total raid damage including Scorch glyph. In section 2, we compute the total raid damage given Fireball glyph. Finally, in section 3, we simply compute the difference of section 1 and section 2. Analysis proceeds in the general case until the penultimate section, approximations and conclusions, at which time the author attempts to apply the model to a real fight in order to arrive at the best glyph choice. 2. Definitions. First, we need to define all our variables and statements to come. Variable uppercase I, explanation, set of all raid members. Variable lowercase I, explanation, element of capital I. DPS subscript I in italics, explanation, raw DPS for raid member lowercase I. Capital H, explanation, haste factor for the mage. Uppercase T, explanation, given fight length. N, subtext I in italics, damage reduction from Scorch's absence. 3. Scorch Glyph SG present. In this case we compute the total raid damage given that the mage uses Scorch Glyph. Damage during Scorch stacking. The integral of 1.5h to O, the total sigma of 24 given that I lowercase italics equals 1 is from the DPS of subtext I in italics subtracted by N subtext of I in italics plus DPS subtext Scorch over by the difference of T. Damage after Scorch stacking. The integral between T and 1.5h for the sigma total between 24 given that I in italics equals 1, DPS subtext I in italics plus DPS subtext rotation also in italics differentials T. Total damage therefore is the integral of T towards 0 with the sigma total from 24 with I in italics equal to 1, DPS subtext I in italics plus DPS mage W over SG all in italics to the DTs minus the integral of 1.5h to 0 with the sigma total between 24 given that I in italics equals 1 of N subtext I in italics dt. 4. Fireball Glyph FB.G present. In this case we compute the total raid damage given that the mage uses Fireball Glyph. Damage during Scorch stacking. The integral between 7.5h to 0 with the sigma total of 24 given that I equals 1, DPS subtext I in italics minus N subtext I in italics plus DPS subtext Scorch in italics dt. Damage after Scorch stacking. Integral between T and 7.5h of the sigma total of 24 given that I equals 1, DPS subtext I plus DPS subtext rotation dt. Therefore the total damage is the integral of between T and 0 of sigma total 24 given that I in italics equals 1 DPS plus DPS raw W divided by FB.G, or in italics, dt, minus the integral between 7.5h, that's a capital H, and 0 of the sigma total of 24 given that I in italics equals 1, ni subtext dt. 5. Effect of Scorch Glyph versus Fireball Glyph. In this section, we compute the difference of the case in which the mage uses Fireball Glyph and that in which he uses Scorch Glyph. If the difference is greater than 0, Fireball Glyph is chosen. If the difference is less than 0, Scorch Glyph is chosen. Damage with Fireball Glyph minus damage with Scorch Glyph is equal to integral between t and 0 dps subtext raw w divided by FB.G minus dps subtext raw w over sg dt minus the integral of 7.5h and 0 with the sigma total of 24 given that I equals 1 of n subtext I in italics dt plus the integral between 1.5h and 0 of the sigma total 24 given that I equals 1, that's the italic I, of n subtext I dt. 6. Approximations and conclusions. We have now arrived at our full analytical results, equation 3. However, it is not much use to us, since we would need to do a number of calculations to use it. Since n subtext I is function of time, we would need to do 5 n subtext I italics computations per person doing damage in the raid. Fortunately, theoretical damage is fairly tight amongst classes for our purposes. This means that our n subtext I italics s are nearly all equal to each other. Furthermore, a disconcerting reader could notice that the first integrand in equation 3 is a thinly disguised n subtext mage italics as well. Combining these simplifying assumptions, we can transform equation 3 into something a little more workable. Equation 3 equals between the integral of t and 0 dps subtext raw w over FB.G minus dps subtext raw w over sg dt minus the integral of 7.5h and 0 sigma total 24 given that I in italics equals 1 ni dt plus the integral between 1.5h and 0 sigma total 24 given that the I italics equals 1 of ni dt is approximately equal to the integral between t and 0 ndt minus the integral of 7.5h and 1.5h of 24 ndt, therefore equals n times capital T minus 24 times 6h equals j. Now it is plainly evident that given our simplifying assumptions, the damage loss from not having Scorch applied is actually not a factor in the final glyph consideration. The decision is a function of only two parameters, namely the fight length t, uppercase, and the mage's haste factor, capital H. The following table summarizes the decision for which glyph to use as a function of the fight length, capital T, given a haste factor of 1 over 1.1409. T, 0, 126.216. Sign of J minus, glyph Scorch. T, 1.26.216. Sign of J0, glyph either. T, 126.216, infinity. Sign of J plus, glyph Fireball. It is now evident that Fireball Glyph is a better choice than Scorch Glyph in the case where every member of the heroic raid is a DPS who gains the benefit of improved Scorch, a situation which gives us a lower bound on the value of J. Further refinements, such as reformatting the model to work for a non-heroic raid, or improve Scorch to buff only the caster damage dealers in the raid, will lower the value of the coefficient of capital H italicized, thereby making Fireball Glyph more desirable. The only foreseeable refinement presenting an alteration of the conclusion for the fights of length of over 120 seconds is the reformatting of fight length as a function of rain damage. Given a cursory thought to this refinement, a fight length would need to be shrunk by a number of magnitude 1 to effect a sign change of J, an unlikely outcome.
What about Glyph of Mirror Image?
Ah, young mage, let me refer you to Mumra's great treatise on